And the state of retirement funds and retirees in South Africa has been highlighted in the latest Sanlam Benchmark Survey. The findings include research showing that less than 10% of retirees can maintain their standard of living before retirement. That's said to be due to under-saving and the non-preservation of assets. Lorraine Mekwa speaks to us about this development. Thank you so much for your time, Lorraine. It is understood that a percentage of South Africans feel that they'd rather opt out from the RAs because of the spending pressures that South African consumers are facing. Talk to us about this finding.
Absolutely, Tumisang. And the biggest issue I think we're seeing is that there's so much that's competing for people's money. You know, salaries are not growing, but people need to be trying to find, where to spend their money on. With load shedding, people are having to spend a lot more on those items that make load shedding a bit better, and that is really affecting what they are able to spend on. And unfortunately, retirement is one of those things that are struggling. So we're just generally seeing a really under pressure consumer throughout, and it's affecting everything else.
Now tell us about this TO pot system and the role that it plays in this regard.
So two-pot system is proposed regulation, and we expect that it could come into effect in March of 2024. So what we're expecting is that changes will see members' contributions being split when it comes into implementation next year. So you'll see a third going into a pot that you can access, which we'll call the savings pot. And then we'll see 2/3 going into the retirement pot. And that's the pot where you will get forced preservation, if you'll say. So you won't necessarily get access to that. So what's also going to happen is that for members who have been contributing up until the 1st of March of 2024, the assets that they've contributed up until then will have a separate pot. So it's essentially, you'll have 3 pots if you have been contributing up until the 1st of March 2024. So that third pot, you won't necessarily have access to. That will basically have the scheme rules that you had in the past. So you'll get these 2 new pots, a third and 2/3 of your contributions going there, and you're able to access. So it's 2 objectives essentially of this regulation, is to give people access when they need emergency funding, because people are struggling. And I think the realization that sitting with these assets when you're not able to access them is making people behave in a certain way. So they're resigning from their jobs in order to access their retirement assets. So this will give people that access without having to retire necessarily, while also growing the actual preservation rates, which is also a very big objective of the industry.
It sounds like a very well-balanced system on the side of protecting consumers, and I'm interested in finding out how the industry is receiving it.
So I think it's been a bit split. I think initially the thinking was, if you're taking away money from the system, this is going to have negative impacts in terms of the preservation rates that you have in the industry. But we did some modeling to have a look at what the potential impact looks like. And it looks like it actually increases preservation rates, especially for younger members in funds, because you must remember that the younger members will have a longer time in a 2-pot system, so they will have a lot of time to have that forced preservation. So it actually increases general preservation rates. So it's positive in that way. So there's quite a lot of people who see that as such a positive. But there is also some negativity that we're seeing potentially, because remember that I mentioned that there's 3 pots, and the people who have not been preserving, so they've been taking their money every time they change jobs, they take their money, and what that means is that, and if they're older, so if they're now sitting and putting very little money into the savings pot, so a third and 2/3 into the retirement pot, so what could potentially happen is that if they're taking their money out of that access pots, taking the third money, is that they actually don't get to grow their assets as much, because they don't have the benefit of a long time of putting money into the retirement pot. So for older members in retirement schemes, we actually think that it could be quite problematic because especially if they have been taking money already. So I think for older members, it would be better if basically they got the guidance from financial advisors and just general financial education from their funds to not touch the excess pot because it doesn't save everyone necessarily. I think in the long run for the younger members, excuse me, it will be quite beneficial in the long run.
As a parting shot, Lorraine, the overall benchmark, what does it say about the state of the South African consumer, especially when it comes to saving for that much-needed retirement time?
It's, the comments that we're getting are really of an under-pressure consumer. The consumer is very much under pressure, and a lot of the readings we're getting were just reflecting that. One of the things was 70% of respondents in the survey were basically saying that they don't think that their retirement savings would be enough for them to live when they get older, when they reach their golden years. So that's quite a concern. I think 30% members said that they didn't even understand the retirement benefits that they provided by the employer, which is, also quite a really negative sentiment to be getting from members of funds. I think 40% of respondents said that they didn't have confidence in understanding all the investment tools that are quite available. And I mean, that's really quite unfortunate because, funds have all the tools that they can use to inform members of all of what they have available to them. So it does seem like just education of members is still something that we need to just do a bit better. And also you're seeing that I think about 20% said they're not getting the financial advice early enough. So they're not making the right decision. So it's an under pressure consumer now, and it's an under pressure consumer in the future, which means they'll be more reliant on the state pension or on families, just putting those family members further under pressure. So it's really something that I think we need to do better as a retirement industry and just ensure that we're empowering people a bit more and giving them the information through adequate financial education.
Absolutely. Thank you for your great insights. That's Lorraine Mekwa from Sanlam talking to us about that benchmark study that speaks of the state of retirement.